we'll see it in a moment where this could be useful to you in assignment 8. There's plenty of information online. What's the word? Investigate it when you need it, if it makes sense, and say, okay, right, this is actually what I want to do. I believe this is a suitable use case for me here to actually use Mocking Ingest. Let me find out how to actually do that. So you learn through practical use of it rather than study a whole bunch of documentation on it, which you'll constantly get. All right, so assignment 8. What's the word? Actually, just whilst we're looking at it, let me just run up the investigate it when you sheet it, so you can see it and say, okay, right, this is actually what we ingest. Be through practical use of it rather than study a whole bunch of documentation on it, which you'll constantly get. All right, so assignment 8. What's the word? Actually, just whilst we're looking at it, let me just run up the investigate it when you sheet it, so you can see it. Oops. Okay, right. This is actually what we ingest. Be through practical use of it rather than. Okay, so usual thing, basic, same as it was in the Android and iOS versions. Again, focusing very heavily on our code coverage, but also no lint errors. So lint is our syntax checker. We need to keep on top of that. Make sure we're writing not just TypeScript and JavaScript, but good TypeScript and JavaScript. Particularly important if we're writing JavaScript rather than TypeScript. So we definitely need some external help to point out when we've actually written some sloppy code. So no lint errors. Make sure you run npm run lint, and obviously 100% code coverage. And again, we build it up. So the basic tests are provided to you. So as you work through them, the order in which they're in the test suite gives you an idea of the order in which you should tackle them. Obviously, workspaces first, then channels, messages, and so on. Excuse me. You've got an example from the 3 ball clubs example of reading in the JSON resource. That's nice and easy. And obviously, we've got navigation, so we go from workspace to channels to messages to message, and so on. So usual thing. This is iOS screenshots. Obviously, we'll be doing the Android version. So basically, we start with the just a very simple list. Incidentally, these will not scroll off the screen. Obviously, workspaces first, because you're using a Pixel 9, which has a big screen. We drill down to this one, to elevator. So we get the back arrow gets some additional text on it. We'll drill down on the painter. We get a list of messages within them. So these are channels, these are messages, visual date thing. And then we drill down on an individual message from a particular user. And instant navigation back up again. We've done this twice already. Nothing new in that. Obviously, the big difference is that we're using React Native rather than SwiftUI or the capabilities we have in Android using Kotlin. We can still see if that's run up. Messages within them, so these are channels and messages. It has. Okay, good. And then we drill down on individual messages from the user. So that's the basic requirement. Make sure that's absolutely nailed, 100%. Pass all the tests, get perfect code coverage, commit it, as in, obviously you're committing it to your Git, local Git repository, but actually submit it to Canvas. And then start working on the advanced functionality a little bit at a time. So there's a number of advanced features, the usual ones, counting and getting the number of unique so that's the basic contributors, number of messages and so on, and how recently they came in. And obviously you need to think carefully about how you're actually going to test this. So in iOS, because the test ran in the simulator, the only way we really had to test this was to inject into the loaded data some new data that was very recently created so we could get the seconds, the minutes, and the hours, messages, and so on. because a React Native application when we're testing is not running in a phone emulator simulator, we don't need to do that. So we can mock the information. The only way we really have so I'll sort of leave it at that in terms of which bit that we mock. So investigate it, have a think about it. When you get there, when you get to the point where it's okay, right now, I'm not getting perfect code coverage on my code that does the seconds, minutes, and hours thing because there's no data in the JSON that actually is that recent. How do I do that without actually inserting new information into the after we've loaded it from the JSON file? And mocking, this is a good time to get to grips with mocking in Jest if you've not done it before in web application development, because this is going to become an extremely useful when we're working on assignment 9. Okay, so let me just the model solution is now running. Okay, oops, come here. There we go. So obviously this is it running on the simulator. I have to scroll down and so on. So we can select the paving, lineman, whatever, down to an individual, and then back again. So it's putting a bit like we put Red Sox up here, stripped it off the message. Same kind of ideal here. This is getting the name of the channel that was passed out to us. This is getting the name of the workspace, and here we are back at the top. So that's the advanced bit, but obviously make sure you've nailed everything on basic before you move on to advanced. You do have a fair amount of time because this isn't due till Monday, so this is a really good time to make sure you're on top of your game in terms of mocking and testing and absolutely getting 100% on everything. This is the third time you've done this assignment, so there really should be no excuse for not getting a perfect mark on this assignment. Okay. All right, so a little bit of source. Obviously, the three possible approaches that we've looked at this morning from the three examples, props, context, and view model ball clubs examples. You can use any of them, but remember you actually have to pass all the tests. You will probably the tests work with all three. You'll probably find it easier to pass the test if you base your solution on the cascading properties example. Excuse me. And when we get to the advanced, the grading system advanced text will work. It doesn't matter which of the three you used. But if you're, and you're more than welcome to use any of the others, but obviously you have to make sure you pass the tests that are provided. If you're struggling to get the test to pass and you use one of these two, that might be a time to say, okay, right, well, let's fall back onto the cascading properties example and maybe use that as my guide for assignment 8. Alrighty, so one more example project. So one of the things that, actually, let me just bring the model solution back across. Obviously, you have to make sure you pass the tests that are provided. So not all the data fits on the screen. That might be and this is always going to be the case. So this is a flat list, obviously. So some of the workspaces are off to the bottom. So if we wanted to be able to have a test that said, okay, when we render the screen, asphalt paving is visible. That would be a good test. But we also want an example that says site work and site utilities is not visible. And this is always it shouldn't be because it's actually notionally off the screen. So we could have a test that says when it first renders, asphalt is paving is visible. Good test. Another test, remember one assertion per test, that says whatever that other one was is not visible. Great test. And then now we want a test that says, but if we render it and then scroll, site work and site utilities is now visible. That would be a test. And then you could have another test that says if you render it and scroll, asphalt and paving is not visible. Because it isn't. It's off the screen. So how can we scroll around programmatically from our test? Another test. So either off the bottom or off the top. So when we have that one where we've got a lot of workspaces, bring it back. We want to be able to check whether we scroll down, something appears, something disappears, and you might even want to check scrolling back up again. So how do we do that? So let's just post yet another example. So in the React Native testing library, there is something called, there's a method on the user event called scroll to. So again, let me just put yet another example. I'll be keeping track of the examples from today, because it's all examples today. And there's something that's called 14.scroll testing. Something appears, something disappears, and you might fire that one up, download it. So how do we do that? Let me just go on. So let's just put that one up. Well, I don't actually need to run the simulator, because the simulator is not particularly interesting. There is something called, there's a method on the user event called scroll to. So again, let me just put yet another example. I'll be keeping track of the examples from today, because it's all examples today. And there's something that's called 14.scroll testing. Something appears, something disappears, and you might fire that one up, download it. So how do we do that? Let me just go on. Someone give me the thumbs up and zoom out when you actually got it. There is something called, there's a method. Oh, you can see it. Anyway. So the file that we care about here, you'll see in the test underscore test folder, scroll test.js. Let me just bring that over here. So what we're caring about this test here is it scrolls to Washington. So when we run the app up, Washington Nationals are not visible. They're off the screen. So the file that we care about here is here we are. So what we want to do is we want to render the app. Is that big enough, by the way? Can everybody see that? Just bring it. Do you want me to make it a bit bigger? I can go bigger. So we render the app, which is obviously also just our Ball Clubs app again. So when we run the app, and then we basically wait until the Atlanta Braves appears on the screen. They're off till line 53. So that's obviously they're going to be our first Ball Club. And then we want a functionality that I just want to keep scrolling until Washington Nationals appears on the screen. Everybody see that? And obviously this is just clearing up a mess afterwards. So I've implemented a function called scroll to, which takes an argument of how big, how tall the screen is, and how many times to actually do the scroll. So I'm saying I don't want to have to do more than 2 scrolls, so swipes with my finger. And then we want the functionality. And I'm expecting Washington Nationals to actually appear after 1 scroll, but I'm going to allow 2. So the function we have here, we're importing here we get user event. That could be we don't need that user event from React Native. Excuse me. Actually, we're not using that function sleep anymore either. That can actually go. So I'm saying I don't want to have to do more than coding the scrolls. So within this function, we actually have to set up a user event. And a user event is somebody tapping into the keyboard or pressing and holding something with their finger. And then we're just going around a loop here on the number of swipes that was passed in. And we're looking for text, which is the Washington Nationals. And the label text is the accessibility label for the flat list, which is our list of clubs. So we actually have a look in here. And the user event is somebody tapping into the Ball Club list and holding something with the accessibility label for the flat list is Ball Clubs. So in our test, and we're looking this is the thing that we're actually scrolling. We're actually going to scroll and the thing on the screen that has that accessibility label, so that we can only scroll 2 things. We can scroll flat lists, or we can scroll views. Flat list is actually inside a scroll view, which is why we can scroll it. So we're basically saying we're going to scroll 300 screen units, roughly. This is the thing that we're actually well, a little bit more than half the screen. And we're going to keep doing that for as long as we haven't exceeded our number of swipes, until we find on the screen the thing we're actually looking for. If we don't find it, this will actually throw an exception, and then we scroll. So the thing might already be there, in which case we're good to go. But if it's not there, we then swipe once and go back around the looper and say, I'm going to wait for it to appear again for 1 second. If it doesn't appear, I'm going to catch the exception and go around again. But in this case, it will actually find it on the first swipe. And then we just do, this is our assertion here. We're asserting that is now actually on the screen.
If we don't find it,
so if we just do,
and then we scroll. So the thing might already be there.
In which case, we can just in here.
If it's not there, we then swipe once and go back around the loop.
It actually finds it.
Wait for it to appear.
So, for instance, if we want to check that, we want to test our test. This is a very important thing. So, if I just change it, so it's looking for Washington National space 2, and run our test again, we want to make sure that our test is working. We'll make sure that Washington National is 2. This test should fail because it doesn't exist. It doesn't. But if we actually have a look at what gets spat out, it has scrolled to the bottom of that scroll list because the debug information is telling us the Washington Nationals is actually on the screen, as well as Toronto and Texas and Tampa.
I just change it so it's looking for Washington Nationals.
I'm just being lazy here. I'm just changing the one test. This should be multiple tests. One to prove that Washington Nationals does exist, and one to prove that Atlanta Braves is not visible.
If we actually have a look at what gets
that makes sense, because once we've scrolled to Washington Nationals, the Atlanta Braves should have disappeared off the top.
Because the debug.
Okay, so that's another project that you'll want to be incorporating things from in your testing for assignment 8.
I'm just being lazy here.
There's the documentation for it, and obviously you can actually have a look at that example. So that little function, you don't need that function. You could actually just do that in line. You're more than welcome to use it. Obviously, cite where you got it from, but you could just do the scroll yourself inside your test.
Okay, so that's another one.
Okay, and that after just around 15 minutes just wraps us up for today. I'll do the handouts from today's class. You've already got the examples. I'll release assignment 8 in Canvas as soon as we get off the Zoom. Just a heads up for next week. Tuesday, we'll be looking at the 2 additional conceptual items that we need for assignment 9. Threads, so how do we do things asynchronously in React, and obviously network access, so how do we make a call to the API, to an API to actually get information back, and obviously an introduction to assignment 9, which is obviously same as 3 and 6. Thursday, first thing we'll have the cross-platform quiz, and then we'll just use the rest of the time as a workshop. You can ask questions, we can kick things around, on Tuesday and Thursday, once we've actually done the slightly more formal part, we'll close down the lecture Zoom and open the office hours Zoom, so we can answer individual questions.
Thursday, first thing we'll have.
Okay, alrighty. Questions before we wrap up for this morning?
There's a workshop. You can ask questions.
Any
things around.
pressing issues?
And
Assuming assignment 7 has proved to be fairly straightforward.
Tuesday and Thursday, once we've actually done the.
Okay, good stuff. So if I don't see you in office hours this afternoon, have a good productive time with assignment 8 over the weekend, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday.
And open the office hours Zoom, so we can answer individual questions. Thursday, first thing we'll have.
Okay, alrighty. Questions before we wrap up for this morning?
There's a workshop. You can ask questions.
Any
things around.
pressing issues?
And
Assuming assignment 7 has proved to be fairly straightforward.
Tuesday and Thursday, once we've actually done the.
Okay, good stuff. So if I don't see you in office hours this afternoon, have a good productive time with assignment 8 over the weekend, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday.
And open the office hours Zoom, so we can answer individual questions. Thursday, first thing. Okay, alrighty. Questions before we wrap up for this morning? There's a workshop. You can ask questions. Things around pressing issues and assuming assignment 7 is proved to be fairly straightforward. Tuesday and Thursday, once you've actually done the. Okay, good stuff. So if I don't see you in office hours this afternoon, have a good productive time with assignment 8 over the weekend, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday. And openly, see you then. So we can ask individual questions. Thursday. Okay, alrighty. Questions before we wrap up for this morning? There's a workshop. You can ask questions. Things around pressing issues and assuming assignment 7 is proved to be fairly straightforward. Tuesday and Thursday, once you've actually done the. Okay, good stuff. So if I don't see you in office hours this afternoon, have a good productive time with assignment 8 over the weekend, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday. See you then. So we can ask individual questions. Okay, alrighty. Questions before we wrap up for this morning? Pressing issues and assuming assignment 7 is proved to be fairly straightforward. Okay, good stuff. So if I don't see you in office hours this afternoon, have a good productive time with assignment 8 over the weekend, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday. See you then.
Teenagers are building businesses with AI while the only AI you know is ChatGPT. Let's be real.
Today of about a home site has been paid. Here we have
Teenagers are
and you
building
have
businesses
free
with
and
AI while
common
the only
parking
AI you know is
all
ChatGPT. Let's be real.
done that days. You guys, it has had some updates. So the outside has been painted, the inside has been painted. There is a bathroom redone. Here we have super easy access. So one of the main streets of town is right behind me, and you have free and common parking all the way along. And then we come into this beautiful street, and the property that we're going to be looking at is this one here, you guys. So we have a kitchen, kitchen and dining on the ground floor. Then we have our bedroom from on the first floor. Then we have the top, a little bit behind that you can see from here. We have another bedroom. And then we come into this beautiful street, and the property that we're going to be looking at is this one here, you guys. So we have a kitchen, kitchen and dining on the ground floor. Then we have our bedroom from on the first floor. Then we have the top, a little bit behind that you can see from here. We have another bedroom. And then we come For further information, our website, a landing, and as we come in, we're going to find a landing and original specs. And this home is definitely ready for you to move in. Just need to personalize it, dust it a little, and then you'll be ready. We're going to live finally your Italian dream. Why would you wait any longer? Time flies. Remember that. In front of us, we have a water tank, which back in the day, it was very common to have on the hilltop towns. It is mainly used for when the water company has to do works or a major emergency works, and then you have your own supply of water. Your Italian dream. Beautiful door. Why would you wait any longer? It's actually new. Yes, it's a new door. Oh, nice handle. You know, the little details that talk quality. Very common to have on the hilltop towns. It's a new door, as I was saying before, but the style suits the property perfectly. Don't say that. Look, you even have this little piece of glass here that you can open or do this actually to get ventilation here. I love it when people think of everything. It's a new door, as I was saying before, but the style suits the property perfectly. Over here we have our kitchen, dining, and a bit of living as well. This little piece of glass here that you can very neat and functional. We have an aircon unit right there. I love it when people think of everything. It's a new door, as I was saying before, but the style suits the property perfectly. Over here we have our kitchen, dining, and a bit of living as well. This little piece of glass